I've met plenty of guitarists that are way better than me at the guitar, but they still don't know how to improvise or jam out with a bunch of musicians. And that's because fundamentally, improvising is not really a technique thing. It's not about how many notes can you play and how fast can you play them. It's about what notes are you playing and why are you playing them. So in this lesson, I'd like to show you the basic fundamentals of improvising on guitar. That way, no matter how good you are at this instrument, you'll still be able to excel at improvising at your own level. And our first step in that process is going to be getting comfortable with this guitar shape. We'll discuss more about what a shape really means later on in this lesson, but for right now, let's just learn to play this and get through it. In case you don't know, this is a fretboard diagram. We see our low 6th string down here, that's the thick string, and we see our high thin E string over here. These dots here are telling us what fret we're going to play, and the number inside just tells us what finger to use. Now this shape can be played anywhere on our guitar, but today what we're going to do is start it on the 7th fret. So if I take my index finger and place it right here on the 7th fret of my 5th string, we are now ready to play the other notes in this shape. And those notes are going to be the 7th fret and then the 9th fret with the ring finger and then the 10th fret with the pinky. Then we'll do that again on the next string, 7, 9, and 10. The next string just has 7 and 9. The next string has 7, 8, and 10. And then again, 7, 8, and 10. You can work your way back down these exact same notes, and you should notice that this shape is very comfortable for our fingers. There's not a lot of stretching, it's just positioned very well for our fingers. Now you might be having problems playing that, and if you are, I'm guessing it's happening with these low notes. If your technique isn't right, these low notes can be difficult to get into, and my advice is watch out for your thumb. If your thumb is creeping up on top of the neck, it's going to be very hard to stretch your fingers into those first 3 frets. But if I can take my thumb and lower it and let my wrist drop down a little bit, then those notes will be much easier to access, as opposed to doing this where you'll have to shift your entire hand over. Now your first goal is to get good at the shape. I want you to play it as fast as you humanly can, all with downpicking. So if this is as fast as you can downpick, all downstrokes, that's how fast I want you to be able to move through the scale. I think that's a good, worthy goal. All downs as fast as you can downpick. Then, if you've already practiced your alternate picking and if you're comfortable with that, start trying to alternate pick the scale. Go a little slower when you start doing this because it's going to be tricky. But eventually you want to try to pick up as much speed through a shape like this as you can. But what's more important than playing this shape quickly is having interesting ways to play this shape. And that's where scale patterns come in. We don't have to just go up and down these notes. We could do something interesting like go up 3 notes and then back up a note and then go up 3 notes. And then back up a note and go up 3 notes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you could just make up your own scale patterns. They don't even have to be consistent. You could say, I'm going to go up a string, and then I'll do that string again. And then I'll go to the next string, and I'll do that string again. And then I'll just do this string twice, and then this string twice. Anything to break up the flow of just going up and down. Because as you'll hear later on, just going up and down a bunch of notes is probably the worst way you can improvise a solo. And all of that is your first step. Make sure you're comfortable playing this shape and you're comfortable moving up and down it in different ways. Our next step is to understand what we actually just learned. What we just learned is a minor scale shape. It's a shape that will generate any minor scale depending on where we start. So if we started here on the note E, like we did, well, we were playing the E minor scale because our first note was the note E. But if we slide over and start on the note F, all of a sudden we get the notes of the F minor scale, just magically. We don't even need to know the names of the notes. We don't have to calculate anything. All we have to do is start on a note like C, and then play this shape, and we get the C minor scale. Now, since this shape starts with its root on the 5th string, that means you do need to know the notes on your 5th string. And if you haven't learned this should be the motivation to learn it. Your 5th string is pretty simple to memorize. It starts on the note A, and then we have B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. In between are the sharps and flats. So as long as you can memorize that, then you can immediately play all 12 minor scales just by starting on the note A, and then you get an A minor scale, using this exact same shape. And I need to point out how awesome this is, that we only need to learn one thing, and then as a bonus, we get 12 different scales out of it. Piano players don't have it this easy. If they want to learn all 12 minor scales, they have to learn 12 different looking patterns. But it can get confusing on guitar too, because there's just so many scale shapes, and there's no consistent naming behind them. So really don't worry about memorizing all the scale shapes. Just memorize a few important ones and then learn how to use them, which is exactly what we're going to continue doing in this lesson. So how do you actually use this scale shape? There's lots of things we can do, but the first thing we're going to do is just trying to improvise with it. This is the E minor scale, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to jam out over just an E minor chord. That's it, just an E minor chord. Keep things simple for right now. And that track will sound something like this. What I want you to do is try to feel the steady pulse, the beat that we're on, and you're gonna try playing every note of your scale shape, your E minor scale, right on every one of these beats, like this. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully, this is a pretty simple process for you. And then back down. But if you can't play at this speed yet, maybe take a pause and practice the scale shape just a little bit more until you can move up and down like this. Your next step is to just speed up. Instead of doing quarter notes, you'll do eighth notes. Bum, 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 bum. Can you hear? This actually sounds pretty good, right? All the notes we're playing actually fit in. From there, your next step is to practice over this jam track using some scale patterns that you've practiced. I've mentioned this one before that works in threes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Isn't this more interesting than just moving up and down? So any scale pattern that you've already practiced, now's the time to start using it. Now this stuff that we just did is pretty basic and kind of boring, but it's really important. You're just getting your hands dirty, you're trying to hear what those notes sound like, you're trying to stay on time. These are the important principles of improvising. Stay on time, hit the right notes. But I'll say now, I think the worst kind of improvised solo you can play is what we just heard. All you did was play up and down the scale, you played some scale patterns. There was something very important missing, and that's rhythm. Everything we just did was all robotic. It was always the same note, always moving at the same tempo. And nothing natural happens that way. Imagine if every single syllable that I spoke was spoke at the exact same tempo. We don't talk that way. We shouldn't play our guitars that way. So now, your next step is to take everything we've learned, going up the scale, going down the scale, doing scale patterns, staying in the shape, staying on time, but create some pauses. Maybe do some fast stuff, do some slow stuff, and most importantly, let some things ring out. So take a listen. I'll start, but then I'll stop. And then back down the scale. Back up. Let it breathe. And still let it breathe, right? Isn't this nicer than what we heard before? Now, I'm not playing anything fast or flashy, but it still sounds nice. And it's not annoying, like, because I'm not just moving up and down all the time. But I am doing very simple scale patterns right here. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy, just taking my time. I know for some of you, the rhythm thing is going to be really tough. And if you find yourself struggling with it, I do want to let you know I do have a 2-part rhythm guitar course for sale on my website, signalsmusic.studio. It's got really good reviews. So if you are struggling with rhythm, consider heading over to the site and checking that out. Now, our next step is critical. If you do what we just did, play the scale and let some notes ring out, you might discover that some notes don't actually sound that good. For example, here's me going up that E minor scale. But if I stop on the wrong notes, and maybe start on the wrong notes, this isn't sounding good anymore. And this problem has a very easy solution. All we need to do is find the chord tones within our shape. You already know this is the E minor scale. Well, we can find the notes of the E minor chord inside this shape. Specifically, our first note here, then we have our third note and our fifth note. And then here's our octave, and then our third note and the fifth note. These notes are the most important notes in that shape that we learned. And what I want you to do, even without the jam track, is right now start practicing this scale, but learn to rest on those important chord tones. So maybe work your way down the scale, but stop on that note right here. Or stop on that one. Or on that one. But try not to, right now, stop on other notes like this one or that one. Those are going to be possible trouble notes. And instead of memorizing all those possibly troublesome notes, just memorize the really important ones, the chord tones, because this will help you down the line with your arpeggios as well. So let's come back to the jam track and do everything we did before, except when we let a note really ring out, maybe the notes we stop on or maybe the notes that we start on, we'll make sure those are chord tones. So I'll start at the very top of the scale and I'll just find a chord tone right away. Right there. play it again. Move to my next chord tone. And stop there. And I'll just let that ring out. Maybe move down the scale. Stop on a chord tone. I'll do that again. And then down the scale and stop on a chord tone. Right? So that is your next step, to take all the skills we've learned before, but really concentrate as you're improvising and ask yourself, where's my next chord tone? How do I want to get there? Do I want to jump straight to the chord tone? That would be considered playing an arpeggio. Or do you want to find a chord tone and kind of bridge the gap, bridge the gap between this chord tone and this chord tone by just playing the scale in between? And since we're talking about chord tone soloing and the shape specifically, I think I'd be crazy to not tell you there's another really important note that's not in the shape, but it's easy to find. So here's our full E minor scale, right? But if you go up 2 more frets, you'll actually have to jump your hand. It's not convenient, but if you move up here, we have another chord tone. We have the octave, the note we started on. That's another E. So I know when I'm improvising using this shape, my favorite shape, I know that it's like, hey, if I want that bonus note, it's right up there. And yeah, I have to move my hand, but I'm not that lazy. I've got enough energy to move my hand up 2 frets and then come back down. And then continuing what we've learned, moving through the scale, stopping on chord tones. So I hope you're hanging in there, because we still have more to get to. But fortunately, we don't really need to learn any new shapes. We know the master shape that's going to take care of everything else for this lesson. And we saw that inside that master shape, we can find specific chord tones that sound really good. But also within this master shape, we can find a pentatonic minor scale, which sounds great. So looking at these notes, if I just remove some of those dots, what all of a sudden I get is this shape, which is, once again, very easy to use for my fingers. And you can think of it as just a shortened version of our full minor scale. We literally just removed the 2nd note of the minor scale and the 6th note of the minor scale, and we're left with this guy right here. And the reason we want to know this is because it sounds good. It sounds really cool to only play those 5 notes. Yeah, it sounds good to play all 7 notes of the minor scale like we've been doing, but when you just do these 5, you get kind of an interesting combination of rocking bluesiness. It's different than all those colors that we get with the minor scale. And when I'm improvising, I love mixing that. I love that rocking flavor of pentatonic minor. It has a unique flavor to it, a unique feel. And then I like switching it up by contrasting it with the full minor scale. And to demonstrate, we'll once again come back to that same jam track, and I'll just play up and down the pentatonic minor scale. You'll hear what that sounds like. Back down. Compare that to the entire minor scale. Right? This one's a little bit more, I'll say, sophisticated, a little bit more interesting, but sometimes you don't want interest. Sometimes you just want that. This is back to pentatonics. You hear how just straightforward it is? And like, I still get that bluesy feel, that rocking feel. But then back to the minor scale. Right? And once I bring in those notes from the minor scale, you can feel it gets a little bit more intriguing. So hopefully by now you're seeing some puzzle pieces connect, and maybe music theory is making a little bit more sense. But I want to stress that if you are into this kind of topic and into the idea of mastering music theory on your guitar, you should check out my theory and songwriting course. So over 45 lessons, over 100 PDFs of worksheets and helpful guides to really help you conquer exactly what it means to understand music on this instrument. It's not really a guitar course, but there are several lessons in there that are specifically for guitar players that explain things like the pentatonic shapes and how to connect them and how that all relate to the minor scale. But we've done all the hard work in this lesson. It actually gets kind of easy from here on out. What I'd like you to do is try to consider any of the techniques that you've already learned or some of the licks that you've already learned and try to apply them here to what we learned today. So let's say you like sliding on the guitar. Is there any way you can use that technique as part of what we've learned today? Can you practice sliding here with the shapes that we've practiced? Absolutely. So instead of just playing up and down the scale, what if you try practicing some sliding licks? Is it harder? Yes, but it also sounds better in the context of a solo. What about bending? Are you comfortable bending? Well, try to find the notes here in the shape that are going to be easy to bend. Those would be notes that are only a half step away, so a fret away. So for example, these 2 notes are only a fret away. So if I want to bend those notes, it's going to be pretty simple. Another easy one is this note right here in the shape. The third string is a very floppy, rubbery string, easy to bend. And if I bend this up a whole step, I can find the next note in the shape right there. And legato, hammer-ons and pull-offs. If you've practiced licks like this, or just going up and down a scale shape with legato, try starting to use those techniques while you're improvising. Now, it would feel silly to go through this entire lesson and not teach you at least one lick that you can do that fits into this shape, so let's do that. And a lick is just a thing you do, all right? It's just a cool little phrase you play. So the lick that I want to show you is going to focus on these 3 chord tones at the top of our shape. And what I want you to do is kind of hold your fingers into those 3 frets like that, and then let your pick just drag across all 3 of them. So even if you've just glued your fingers on there, you get like a chord, but I don't want you to let them all sustain. I want you to maybe take off your fingers as soon as they're done. And this is tricky, but it doesn't have to be clean. You can even get that little chord sound right now. It's just a nice little thing to do. And then when you're done, I want you to hit the highest note of our shape. All right, this is a fun little thing that I can do that's not a scale pattern, it's not just resting, it's a lick that is unique to this shape. You can't do it in other shapes because it just won't fit in your fingers like that. I'm stealing this lick from Dire Straits' Sultans of Swing. Right at the beginning of that song, we hear a lick that sounds like this. And you'll notice that Mark Knopfler in that song is using this shape a lot. So if you really want to get a master class on what to do with this shape, go check out Sultans of Swing. That's in D minor. So it's everything we've done, just moved over to the 5th fret. And pretty much every one of those Mark Knopfler licks, I mean, a lot of them are rooted in this simple little shape. So you should be able to examine what he's done there and then maybe steal some of those ideas for your own soloing in different keys. So to demonstrate what that would sound like if we put it all together, I'll start in the middle of my scale and I'll try to do some legato and then maybe some slides. Let a note ring out. Then maybe I'll do one of those scale patterns I talked about. And stopping on a scale pattern, or on a chord tone. Maybe do the Mark Knopfler lick from Sultans of Swing. And then follow it with something different. Let's take another Mark Knopfler lick. He's good, right? He wrote some good stuff. Just that little phrase right there, straight from Sultans of Swing. But I'll do something that he didn't do. Go down the scale, right? So it's time to start practicing this all on your own. And to be safe, I highly recommend you just do a 1-chord jam track. Don't worry about chord changes right now because that opens up a whole new can of worms for a completely different lesson that we'll get to. If you want access to the jam track that we're using in this lesson, I've made it available to Patreon supporters and members on my website. But I do need to warn you to be very careful with the jam tracks that you practice over. If you just go on YouTube and type in minor jam track, you're going to get a lot of tracks that might not really be in the minor scale. Because what the minor key really means doesn't mean just the 7 notes of the minor scale. This is a complicated topic, but you just need to be aware that they might not tell you on YouTube. I'm telling you, I've seen lots of jam tracks where it says minor, but it's way beyond minor. It's way more advanced. So if you're trying all of these techniques on top of one of those jam tracks, you might be thinking, oh gosh, this sounds really bad. Yeah, it's because they are doing more than the minor scale. They're throwing in notes that you're not playing, and some of those notes might clash with your notes. So just be very careful with the jam tracks that you're going over. I can personally vouch for my Pink Floyd jam track. That one is in E minor, and it is completely in the E minor scale. You won't see any other notes than the notes that we just practiced here today. So it would be a good one to try out as well as the jam track that I'll be using for this lesson. But there are chord changes in that lesson. And like I said, that's going to open up a bunch of different questions and different techniques as well. Now, lastly, this is a beginner's lesson. So there's a lot that I left out that you might be having questions about. Specifically, we just did the minor scale today. What about improvising in major? Well, that'll be the next lesson. And we're going to do that using the exact same shape, which is going to help us unlock the idea of relativity, which will also help us unlock the idea of modes. If you're curious about those concepts, do check out my playlist on the series on my website. But until that next lesson, I hope you did appreciate this one. If you enjoyed this lesson, please thank my Patreon supporters for making it possible. Without their help, I wouldn't be able to make lessons like this. If you'd like to get access to the charts, tabs, and MP3s that I use for this lesson, you'll find them over at my Patreon or at the members-only section on my new site. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.